And on Highway 119 in Greystone, the New York Butcher Shop. Rare quality, well done service.
Storm season is here. Make sure you have a plan of action in place right now. Greg from Pell City and Storm Restoration Roofing should be your first call when storms hit. Insurance companies love working with Storm Restoration Roofing because of Greg Nelson's name and reputation in the industry. When storms hit, call Greg Nelson. He's local, 205-542-3531. He's the home of the free no-cost roof inspection. Greg from Pell City on Facebook, 205-542-3531. It's Storm Restoration Roofing.
Happy football season. At the Next Round, we strive to make our loyal listeners feel like they're a part of the action all season long. My name is Emily Grace McCorder, and I do that by bringing you along for any given Saturday in Auburn or Tuscaloosa. From pregame warm-ups, touchdowns that make you feel a part of the play, and everything in between, our goal is to make you feel like you're inside Bryant Denny or Jordan Hare. Follow along on our social media at Next Round Live on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Also, check out thebarnauburn.com and covercrimson.com while you're at it. Here's to fall Saturdays.
From the creators of The Next Round comes two new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. Two team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
Follow Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. The social media team at Next Round Live is dedicated to giving you daily news conferences and practice video from UAB, Alabama, Auburn, and around college football. Follow and compare to the sites you used to visit. You'll also get the latest highlights and news from the Next Round Daily Show. Turn on the notifications so you don't miss a thing. Next Round Live on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. See more at nextroundlive.com.
By now, you guys know how I feel about my fashion. However, did you know that I care about your fashion choices? Cargo shorts are out, flip-flops are only appropriate on the boat, and please throw away that stained t-shirt from college. You may be thinking, EG, that's all I own. What do I do? Here's what you do. Go to nextround.store and fill your cart with a wardrobe that is approved by me. Stock up on logo t-shirts, hoodies for football season, and hats for every day of the week. Trust me on this one and head over to nextround.store to get stocked up for this season.
There is no better place to watch your favorite sporting events and enjoy great food than one of the three great Birmingham locations of Walk-Ons. The TVs are everywhere with your favorite sports, and the menu is second to none. From the great appetizers like the waffle cheese fries to the Avery Island salad, handhelds like the all-new chicken bomber, bistro specialties with a special taste of the bayou, the amazing hand patty burgers, the great po' boys, and the specialty drinks. Visit any of the three great Birmingham locations of Walk-Ons: Greystone, Stadium Trace and Hoover, and the brand new location in Trussville.
Just because you've quit going to the gym, it doesn't mean that you have to quit gym altogether. Dunaway, that is. With our Next Round podcasts open 24/7, 365, you can access gym anytime you'd like. While you may have done away with your treadmill routine, our version of Dunaway is standing by ready to get you back to your absolute best. Find all that lovely Jimmy D-led content on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and in the podcast section of nextroundlive.com. This message is sponsored by Jimmy Crypto Inc. and Jimmy Crypto for President.
All right, it's time to wake up, football fans. Here we go, Monday Morning Live. I'm Jim Dunaway. Of course, you're here, though, to hear from ESPN's Tom Luginbill, and there he is from his wonderful home up in the Carolinas, where he saw maybe the awakening of Cade Klubnik finally against App State. He looked really good. Coming up, we'll get to Auburn's quarterback and whether or not a change is needed there. Auburn fans are asking for it, why that may be premature. We'll talk about Alabama's slow start. But we've got to start, Lugs, with what Texas, SEC Power Texas, did on the road at Michigan this week. Man, Quinn Ewers looked good, but that was a dominant performance, both sides of the ball from the Longhorns.
It absolutely was, and I think what it shows you is a couple of things. Just how dominant and well-oiled of a machine the offensive line for Texas is, but also I think for Texas, when you lose Tavondre Sweat, you lose Byron Young. A lot of people were questioning how much of a drop-off is that going to be at the two tackle spots on the inside? And I really thought Texas showed up with their defensive front four. Now, I'll say this, with Michigan essentially becoming uber, one-dimensional because they couldn't throw the football, did allow for Texas to crowd the line of scrimmage and really make it tough sledding for Michigan. But I thought it was Quinn Ewers' best performance of his career as a Texas Longhorn. And the plays that he made that were off platform, where he had to extend maybe just a little bit, he had to use his feet to just buy that second passing chance, showed a dimension to him that I don't know if we had seen a lot of previously. So it looks like the incoming transfers, Matthew Golden, Isaiah Bond, have blended really well with DeAndre Moore Jr. and Jonte Cook. And really the only thing you're looking at Texas and you're saying, well, I don't see a Jatavion Sanders. Well, okay, maybe not, but the Helms kid looked pretty darn good.
Yeah, he did.
And so I personally, they in Georgia right now, just off of a 2-week sample size of an eye test and a performance, are clearly head and shoulders above everybody else.
And that happens week 8 when they play each other, Georgia in Austin to play Texas, in what could turn out to be the most watched regular season game of the college football season, more than the Red River, more than the Iron Bowl,
Sure.
and maybe more than Ohio State and Michigan. Of all the contenders for the playoffs, and there are 12 spots, so one loss doesn't knock you out on Michigan's side, but of all the contenders in the college football playoffs, does Michigan have the biggest quarterback deficit right now?
Yeah, I think they do. And one of the reasons why they do is because the two guys they're playing with are two dramatically different skill sets. So it's not as if you're just plugging one guy in for a series and another guy in for a series and everything stays the same. Well, Davis Warren's not going to be able to do some of the athletic things that Alex Orji can do. And I kind of get the sense that they don't quite know exactly what they are. In my opinion, I kind of get the sense that they know they've got a problem that they're having to work around that maybe they hope works itself out over the course of time. But it's not the functional high rate of efficiency offensive approach that we've seen the last 3 years from Michigan, in an offense that they knew exactly what they were. They knew exactly how they were going to attack you. The quarterback made his biggest plays when he had to, and everybody in the stadium, including everybody on defense, knew exactly what they were going to do. Now, I don't think Michigan feels that way about their approach, at least not just yet.
Yeah, it did not look like a normal Michigan team, but I give credit to Texas for that. One more comment on the Texas-Michigan game before we get to Auburn and Alabama and the rest of the SEC and you guys in the chat room, and we do appreciate you being up early with us every Monday morning. Should Texas be number one? Does it matter right now in the AP poll? They got some votes. They seem to have the best win of the season so far. And when it's all said and done, do you believe Sark can carry a team to a national championship?
Well, I don't think it matters whether they're number one right now. In fact, I think, Georgia's acquitted itself quite fine as well in the first 2 weeks, and they're the preseason number one going in. It'll all sort itself out. As you mentioned, they're going to end up playing each other, and they're also going to have to play some other tough games throughout the year. The answer to the Sark question, in my opinion, is unequivocally yes. Not only is he capable of it, but he's done the one thing that Tom Herman was not able to do, that Charlie Strong was not able to do. And that is, once you get that big win, and we've seen prior to Sark arriving, we'd seen Texas get that Sugar Bowl win against Georgia, or we'd see Charlie Strong get that win in the Red River Shootout. And they would have a big, giant, you're like, oh my gosh, maybe they finally figured it out. And then they go lose to Kansas, or they go lose to Kansas State. And I think that's the most important hurdle that Texas has gotten over with Steve Sarkisian's leadership, is they now have, once they set that standard and they left that hurdle, they haven't regressed. They've tackled every challenge, and they've been able to rise to the occasion. And by getting to the college football playoff last year, I think that they don't think about the fallback performance against somebody that you should clearly go out and beat. I think they take the field every time they play. They know they're the best team, and they play like it. And that was a big hurdle, I think, for Sark to get past.
So Texas gets that big win over Michigan, 31-12. up in Ann Arbor, where Quinn Ewers was 24 of 36, 246, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. And it was just another – he doesn't need backup, as you see in the Fanville commercials, just another step towards his Heisman Trophy campaign. Our morning is brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. Promo code next round. Put those 2 words together, promo code. You get a bonus on your first initial deposit there, mybookie.ag, mybookie.ag, and the promo code next round. I hit big with Texas this weekend. I had no worries about Lane.
So you didn't listen to Lance?
I did not listen to Lance on that one. I should have listened to him.
I had people call into my Sirius show yesterday morning telling me to give you flack over the all-in from Lance on Michigan.
Yeah. He was all in on Michigan, that they were going to beat Texas. But then the game we're about to talk about, I was wrong, and it was the biggest surprise for me over the weekend. Brett's in the chat room, says good morning from Florida. Steve jumps in saying good morning. Also from Dave, Brian says, Pavlik, and it is I checked the schedule last night. It is true. He says, happy Civil War and Apple Cup week. Rivalry games out west, and sure enough, Oregon and Oregon State and Washington State played each other this weekend. I'm going to have Thanksgiving weekend vibes. Where's my Thanksgiving dressing? Where's my cranberry sauce?
Yeah, where's your pumpkin beer? I mean, are we going to get snow flurries brought in artificially?
I haven't.
What are we doing here for the Pac-2?
Lugs, I haven't started my Christmas shopping yet, and they're already playing the Oregon State in the Apple Cup. What's happening? I don't know.
I know it, man. It is. We are living in weird times in college football right now.
We are. The biggest surprise for me on the weekend, and this is not just because where I do the show, and I argued with Lance on our morning show, but I was floored by Cal beating Auburn. I was floored by California coming in and beating Auburn, and nothing about travel. I don't, the 2,442 miles. We don't travel by covered wagon anymore. It wasn't about that. It was about how bad Auburn's offense looked against Cal. And the question Auburn fans are asking is, should you move on from Peyton Thorne? 165, 4 interceptions. You got all these great wide receivers coming in. But and this has happened to me. I've been at Talladega. They let me drive a car on the racetrack. It's a nice car. It could go 190 miles an hour, but I could only drive it 110 because that's all I could do. Can Peyton Thorne drive this car fast enough? And you're a former quarterback. And I've tried to say this since the loss. It's not always all on the quarterback, but it did not look like a good quarterback day on Saturday for Peyton Thorne.
No, I kind of feel like when we discuss Peyton Thorne, it's a very similar conversation that we have when we discuss DJ Uiagalelei, where the sample size is large enough now where you have to ask yourself, how many times does a guy maybe have to tell you who he is before you start to believe him? And, I think, is it fair to say average to adequate is his best? I think that's some fair commentary that could be debated. And the reality is, when you turn the ball over 5 times, you could have really good quarterback play and turn the ball over 5 times. You ain't winning many contests. I don't care if you're at home or you're on the road. And to me, that was the most startling thing, because you have distinct advantages there in a home field environment, and it was rocking. And Cal acted like they were playing in some stadium with a JV crowd of 500 people. It didn't faze them.
Yeah, and that blew my mind. I mean, Luke, that's another great point that I haven't talked about. Jordan-Hare Stadium, where Georgia had to fight to win last year. Alabama had to have a miracle to win last year. Cal walks in here, and the crowd's just not the same. I don't know why it's not the same when some of these out-of-conference teams come in.
It's weird, and they acted unfazed, and maybe it's because Justin Wilcox has been able to prepare his team in a unique way with his time at Tennessee, or that they've played in Eugene and they've played, in Husky Stadium, which would be, comparable atmospheres.
No, it's not. It's not, Luke. That's not comparable.
Okay,
it's not comparable.
I'm trying to be diplomatic here. Okay.
The Auburn fans were not the same Saturday as they are when Alabama's there. And I don't understand why.
That's true.
I don't understand why.
Is that a lack of respect for the opponent? Probably. Is that a lack of an appreciation for how hard it is to win each and every week? Yeah, probably. And going back to the question with Peyton Thorne is you have to ask yourself, if we're going to make a change at quarterback, what are our options, and do they make us better, the same, or worse? Right? It's Holden Gariner, or if you decided to say, let's just ride Walker White and see what happens. Well, it sounds good on the surface until you actually do it, and now you get into that scenario, and it's much of the same. I think you got to credit Cal to some degree from a perspective of how they came to play. I mean, that quarterback was throwing darts, man. I mean, they protected him well. He was uber efficient, knew where to go with the ball, wasn't fazed by the surroundings. Cal didn't have much of a run game. Jaden Knott looks like he's about 70%. He doesn't look like he's back to full strength yet. But defensively, that is a linebacker, defensive front led defense. And they were a pretty salty group last year, returned a lot of components. So there's some experience on that side of the ball that maybe surprised Auburn a little bit.
Yeah, I'll tell you, it surprised me a little bit too, because I know they lost a few to the portal, including their former quarterback, who's at Auburn now in rooms with Peyton Thorne. But your point on Francisco Mendoza, he was 20 of his first 22 passes. 20 of his first 22 passes in Jordan-Hare Stadium against an SEC defense. And, again, Peyton Thorne's on our show. You guys are asking in the chat room. He's on our show every week at 9:25 now. He's part of our NIL deal. And even if he becomes QB2 contractually in Alabama law, he will be with us every week. We don't dump him because of his performance by law. He comes on with us, and I can't wait to hear what he says. He will be too classy to say this. But did the young receivers get enough separation? Sometimes maybe they were open and he couldn't get the ball to them because of the protection or just a bad throw. But I also wonder about, did the young receivers get open enough for him? Were there miscommunications on some of the routes? My point is, it's not always just the quarterback.
Correct. It never is. And if you start to peel back all the layers, and you'll find that out, you spend a lot of time studying teams when things aren't going well. It's a variety of different components. I would say when you're dealing with young receivers, you're more apt to have a communication error or a mental lapse than you are not being able to win on one-on-one matchup. Those guys are good enough to win one-on-one matchups, even as true freshmen. That's why they've come in and they've played and they've been as advertised, and, going back to the spring up until now. But, yeah, you're going to have a miscommunication. You're going to have a situation where the quarterback thought you're going to do this and you do the opposite. And that's kind of part of the growing pains of the offense and trying to figure out, what you're going to be. But I think the other thing, too, is as a coach, whether it's Hugh Freeze, whether it's, I had Dabo Sweeney and Garrett Riley this last weekend at Clemson, like you have to be willing. You don't have to publicly do it, but you have to be willing to acknowledge what the deficiencies are and then have to try to come up with a way to mask them. And then, at the same time, really try to accentuate what the strengths are of Peyton Thorne. I just don't know if he's an overly dynamic guy.
Landmine believer. Last 5 games, Hugh Freeze has been blown out by New Mexico State and Maryland in the bowl game and lost at home to Cal. Now, he had that game against Alabama in the middle of that they should have walked away with a win. But those are some questioning losses as he tries to change that lineup. Timmons says SEC analyst Aaron Murray on his show Snaps had an episode last night about Auburn, and he immediately goes on to break down the game and shows off it's Peyton Thorne's fault. So there's another quarterback calling out another quarterback. So I didn't play the position. So here's Smuff. He says Jordan-Hare Stadium is a great home field advantage if the opponent is a top 15 team or Alabama or Georgia. That's it. Anywhere else, and it's an average atmosphere. It did not have the same home field advantage it normally has. Tyler, the fans were that way because they were tired of watching Peyton Thorne. Charlie, 5 turnovers is hard for Superman to overcome. And then Auburn fan Daniel says PT Peyton Thorne might be one of the worst quarterbacks I've ever seen. I've lived through a lot of Auburn games. I don't agree with that one. Our show being brought to you in part by our friends at Gutter Cap. Gutter Cap can get on your roof right now, clean those gutters one last time, and then cover them up to where you never have to worry about them again. Our friends at Gutter Cap are there for you. C. Stu takes care of you. He's been doing it for over really close to 3 decades now in the Birmingham area. And at Gutter Cap, he will take care of you both during that, but a lifetime warranty on this. You get a big discount if you sign up right now. Go check them out online. It's our friends at Gutter Cap, guttercapbirmingham.com, guttercapbirmingham.com. C. Stu will take care of you because he's part of our family up here. It's our friends at Gutter Cap, and always brought to you by our friends at MyBookie, mybookie.ag. You see the QR code up in the corner if you want to go check that out. Let's go to Alabama now. They scored 2 times on their first 11 possessions against USF. And even Nick Saban was caught on TV before halftime shaking his head about the penalties. It was one penalty after another on 75 out at the right tackle position. They finally make a change. They put Pritchett in, and then they zoom on and have a good finish, and they blow them out 42-16. But just 2 of their first 11 possessions is when they score, and the offensive line, with the injury to Proctor, moving Booker out there, did not look good. Your impression of Alabama as they get ready to go on the road to Wisconsin. Should Bama fans be worried about this offense?
I think to some degree there's a bit of a short memory amongst Alabama's faithful in regards to this particular game at this particular time a year ago. You remember that outcome?
Yep.
On the road, 17-3. Alabama could barely complete a forward pass. You just committed 13 penalties and turned the ball over 3 times and won 42-16. And that wasn't Western Kentucky. That wasn't Charleston Southern. South Florida, a lot of people feel like is going to be a really good football team in their conference, and I do too. Was it perfect? No. I remember all of the talk last fall in the first 3 to 5 weeks or so. Jalen Milroe's a mess. Caden Proctor can't play. The sky is falling. Here were my impressions of it. I actually thought when they moved Tyler Booker out to the tackle spot, they were at least functional. The right side of the offensive line was a different part at right tackle, but I thought they held up relatively okay. I thought that Jalen Milroe's legs and his ability to create from a run perspective was fantastic. Jam Miller was explosive and dynamic. Felt like the receivers bailed out or made some plays, if you will, for Jalen Milroe. But you shoot yourself in the foot, you're going to go backwards, and now you have to recover from that. Now, I would be much more concerned if Alabama was not able to show the ability to do what they had to do when they had to do it to put everything in the rearview mirror. If for example, if this thing had been, finished at 24-16, okay, now there's some much more warranted scrutiny. But as this thing wore on, I mean, you got to credit Alabama's ability to forget the last play, move on to the next, and kind of flip the switch, which I have found, and most coaches will tell you, if you come into a game and you're not ready to play, or you're struggling and you can't quite find the stride, you don't just flip a switch and all of a sudden have that happen. Alabama kind of did that on Saturday, and they deserve their kids deserve credit for that. So I think sometimes, and I understand we have new leadership at the University of Alabama right now. It's a new approach. It's a new look, different personalities. So it's very, very easy to nitpick and to criticize. But you also got to remember that the guy that just retired, that just had the field named after him, was in this exact same position at this exact same time last year and had much more questions at quarterback than Alabama does now, and ended up taking that team to the college football playoff. My point is, going to be okay. Kalen DeBoer has coached a lot of really high-level, efficient, successful football at every level across America, and there is no reason to believe that penalties and turnovers are coachable things, Jim. Those are things that are attention to details. Those are things that in practice you can stay on kids about, and so that you carry it over into a game. What you get worried about is if there's an athletic mismatch, or you just aren't good enough, and you're not displaying toughness or physicality. All of those things are concerning. That's not what happened on Saturday with Alabama.
You knew it would happen as soon as Alabama had one bump in the road. Fans everywhere, even on our message boards at covercrimson.com and on our social media, instantly you saw people say, "Oh, you're playing music at practice. Everybody's having a good time now. And look, we're sloppy, sloppy, sloppy." You knew it was going to happen. And there it is.
Yeah.
It happened.
You score 42 points, committing 13 penalties and 3 turnovers.
Yep. And Jalen Milroe told our Emily Grace McWhorter afterwards in postgame that there was never any doubt in his mind or the team leaders, and he saw it up and down the bench. Everybody still was staying positive. They have this mentality of positive thinking, positive thinking, positive thinking. And I think maybe that's why it never felt like they were going to lose the football game, because the leadership on this team stayed so positive.
If there was one area that I don't even know if I'd use the term concerned, I was a bit surprised about. Number one, I thought Alabama did a nice job limiting the explosives, but they never quite shut down South Florida's run game. There was the ability for South Florida to kind of just churn out yards and not have to abandon the run game, obviously, because they were in the game for a considerable amount of time. So if there's something you want to nitpick, maybe there's some fairness there. I think 15 is really good. 11 is very, very good. They got some dudes on the inside. And when it's all said and done, you watch 6, 7, 8, 9 weeks from now, those 3 freshman secondary players that Alabama has, they're going to be a big part of the success of that defense, because they're all talented enough to make an impact. They just need to learn, and they need to play.
Alabama goes to Wisconsin. More on them coming up in the second half hour of the show. That's one of the big games this week. In the chat room, Riley says, "Hey, man, we had plenty of sloppy games and mistakes the last few years under Nick Saban. This is nothing new." And that is true, Riley. I always appreciate you pointing that out. Timmons says you need some depth on that offensive line there. He was going back to Formby there. Chris, self-inflicted mistakes killed Bama for 3 quarters, then they took over. It was 21-13 when Golich decided to kick the field goal instead of going for it on 4th down and a possible 2-point conversion to tie the game up. Because at that point, I think he thought we can get a stop and come back and walk this thing off.
Right.
21-16, but the last 6:45 went all Alabama. We talk a lot in our state about the 4 young receivers at Auburn. Ryan Williams, 4 catches, 68 yards. The one big play is where all the yardage comes from, but he does look special.
He is special, and he's unbelievably mature for his age. I know last week we talked about it. I referenced Amari Cooper, and the reason why I referenced that is Amari Cooper came into the college ranks so far ahead of the curve as a route runner and understanding the nuances of how to attack leverage and alignment and cushion and get open and separate. He just had a natural knack for it. And a lot of guys can be really, really talented, but have to learn how to get open, learn how to become a route runner. Ryan Williams is like Amari in that regard. He's just so far ahead of the curve. A lot younger, obviously, after reclassifying going forward. But we're 2 weeks in, and I promise you, when opposing teams are breaking down the tape and Alabama breaks a huddle, you better figure out where he's at.
Yeah.
And there are not a lot of freshman wide receivers in college football that defenses have to do that with.
Our show being brought to you by our friends at Who Is Coffee. Who Is Coffee is the guys that designed the coffee I'm drinking today. I wish I'd mailed some to Luginbill so he'd still be drinking it. It is.
I know.
It's specifically designed by us up here. We have a couple of different brands, but basically the folks at Who Is Coffee came in and we did taste tests for months, and we designed the coffee bean that we would use, the different combinations of beans from around the world to come up with a next round blend. And you can buy that in our store. Just go to nextround.store, and you'll see a Who Is Coffee link there, and you can get it like we do in the Dunaway home, delivered bi-monthly. We drink a lot of coffee, so
are you guys like specialists? I mean, like, are you guys brew specialists? I mean, you broke down the bean to its very core?
We are not, but we know what we like. So they would bring in, okay, this is a combination of a bean from Colombia or a bean from here, and they would mix these beans together and they bring it in. We'd brew it in our green room, and then we would taste it. Ooh, we don't like that. Ooh, we like that. We'd like a little bit more of this. And then they'd come back with another sample, and we worked it down, and we had the next round blend. So it's the one that's curated by all of us up here that drink coffee. And
Nice.
It is really good. Who Is Coffee helps do that. They have a lot of other varieties for you. But if you'd like the Next Round, just go to nextround.store, click the link, and order your coffee. When we come back, Tennessee on the rise. Nebraska makes a statement. Is Mark Stoops now starting to get in trouble? Arkansas blew it. Lugs his game. Clemson on the come up now. And we'll go back to Auburn and Alabama and you guys in the chat room. All that still to come right here. This is Monday Morning Live. If someone calls you and asks you, hey, what TV station are you watching or what radio station you're listening to, tell them, I don't even know what you're talking about. I'm on the internet and I'm watching Monday Morning Live.
Are you tired of buying your CPAP mask and supplies online only to be disappointed? It's time to visit CPAP Plus, your locally owned and operated CPAP shop that prides itself on personal service. Come see what you're buying at CPAP Plus with 3 convenient locations in Pelham, Highway 280, and now open in Trustful. Drop by for a free CPAP checkup and free filters, no appointment needed. Plus, sign up for their giveaway for a chance to win a free travel CPAP machine. Just Google CPAP Plus or visit any of those 3 locations.
This hour of The Next Round is presented by the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, now featuring 7 days of giveaways with your chance to win a share of up to $125,000. The more you visit the Birmingham Racecourse Casino, the more chances you have to win.
Twin Peaks is the best in the game. Here, you're in the red zone for every college rivalry and divisional matchup all season long. On game day, you never have to decide which teams to watch, only what combination of bites, burgers, wings, and more to order. Plus, where else are your favorite draft beers always poured at a frozen 29 degrees? Only at Twin Peaks, the #1 sports bar.
Stick around after the sun sets. Twin Peaks is open really late. Wind down with bourbon and late night bites. Only at Twin Peaks.
From the creators of The Next Round comes 2 new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. 2 team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
You never know what we're up to here at The Next Round. The easiest way to stay in the know with our antics and adventures is to follow The Next Round across all social media platforms at Next Round Live on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. Whether it's Dunaway sleeping in the studio, Tim and Lunsford breaking down the latest movie release, or Game Day Chronicles, we are here to keep you updated on the latest sports news while, of course, having just a little bit of fun. Follow at Next Round Live across all platforms to join in.
When on YouTube, you constantly hear requests to please like and subscribe. Well, here at Disrupt Media, we aren't going to play that game. Those demands are frankly outdated. So we just want you to hit like or subscribe. It's like a choose-your-own-adventure novel. Pick a path, hit like, or hit subscribe. It's your call. We don't care which, just pick one. Or go to Roll Tide Pods and do it. Or War Damn Pods. Or the Disrupt Media YouTube channel. Or The Meltdown. Just make a decision and stick with it. Like or subscribe, the choice is yours.
Happy football season. At The Next Round, we strive to make our loyal listeners feel like they're a part of the action all season long. My name is Emily Grace McCorder, and I do that by bringing you along for any given Saturday in Auburn or Tuscaloosa. From pregame warm-ups, touchdowns that make you feel a part of the play, and everything in between, our goal is to make you feel like you're inside Bryant Denny or Jordan Hare. Follow along on our social media at Next Round Live on Instagram, X, and Facebook. Also, check out thebarnauburn.com and covercrimson.com while you're at it. Here's to Fall Saturdays.
From the creators of The Next Round comes 2 new sites, covercrimson.com and thebarnauburn.com. 2 team sites with the same excitement and information-driven content that you get every day on The Next Round. Live daily shows, recorded shows, free of charge, plus premium content with insider information starting at just $1. And it's the perfect gift for the Alabama or Auburn fan in your family. Covercrimson.com or thebarnauburn.com. Sign up today.
If Hallmark is playing Christmas movies, that must mean it's Christmas time. Get your loved one the best present of them all this year at nextround.store. Everyone deserves good clothing, and no one deserves another Hoodiegate.
Back with you on Monday Morning Live after that short commercial break. or as I like to call it, when I run to the bathroom real quick, Luke's. That's the only reason that breaks in there, so I can fill up my coffee and go to the bathroom.
I forgot to do that, so I'm just gonna have to hold it to the rest of the way.
That gives you energy, man. That gives you energy. Hey, before we get to all the other stuff, you saw the Clemson and Appalachian State, and people were like, "Ooh, Appalachian State, man, they're the people that beat Michigan a lifetime ago. They could go in there and beat Clemson." But Cade Klubnik came out and played his best game as a Clemson Tiger.
Oh, well, it wasn't even close. And the thing that was interesting about it is. And I'm not saying this just because I broadcasted the game, but because I did broadcast the game, I spent a ton of time on that Georgia tape. And I'll say this about Clemson. And I said this earlier about, when you have concerns about a team, are we tough enough? Are we physical enough? Did we back down? And, were we outmatched or outclassed athletically? That was not the case versus Georgia. Now, could you sit there and say they were undisciplined in the second half, had poor run fit, didn't leverage the football, and then the quarterback just played poorly? Absolutely. That's all fair. And then Georgia just overwhelmed you over the course of the game. But what was exciting for me watching that game, and if you're a Clemson fan, is the open of our broadcast. I had pulled 3 plays from the game against Georgia where Cade Klubnik's got 3 wide open guys. 2 of them are to convert third downs, and he just wouldn't throw it to him. He was hesitant. He wasn't decisive. And I started to really question, does this guy have anticipatory traits? Can he get the ball out and just take what the defense gives him? And so a little bit critical, but then, leading into kick, my point was, if he turns that around, then all of a sudden you're going to see some different things. Well, sure enough, the kid comes out and he's just throwing BBs everywhere. And he's taking what the defense is giving. And to your point, that was App State. That wasn't, Furman. And there were 56 points on the board with 3 minutes and 30 seconds to go in the second quarter. I don't even know if I've ever broadcasted a game like that. But those 2 freshman receivers that everybody was screaming to the rooftops about to Dabo to get into the football game, TJ Moore and Bryant Wesco, it's interesting because both of them played their tail off. And the next thing you know, all of the other guys that were sitting on the bench because of those 2 guys come in the game and they start playing really, really well. So funny how competition and production from another member of your receiver room all of a sudden ups the game of everybody else. So we'll see now. Clemson's got a bye. I bet Dabo wishes he didn't have a bye because he would love to just carry that over and play. But that team athletically, next to maybe Miami, is clearly the class of the ACC through the first 2 weeks. So, yeah, it was a big answer for Dabo and his staff and those kids.
They definitely have a big talented roster. We'll see if they can continue the momentum. If you didn't watch that game, they scored 35 points in the first quarter and 56 by halftime in a 66-20 win over Appalachian State. For Clemson, Auburn fans hope Cade Klubnik is a sign of what Peyton Thorne can be now. Have a bad game and then come back and look good the next few weeks. Jerry in the chat room, Luke's, he makes a great point here. I want your reaction to this. He says, in this expanded era of the playoffs, do season-ending non-conference losses even still exist? It seems like early in this season, every Power 4 team still controls their own destiny. You do have that automatic bid out there, so if it's not a conference loss, does it really matter?
That is true. The only team that it could impact in a negative way is Notre Dame, because Notre Dame's schedule, outside of what looks like SC's reemergence, is not the schedule of Notre Dame past schedules. And to lose a game like that when you have the easiest path to the college football playoff, the easiest path, and to go out and do what they did against Northern Illinois, they may be the only team that I would say that could jump up and bite them. But yeah, I mean, whether it was Georgia or Clemson, whoever, if you get yourself in a position where not only do you win your Power 4 conference, but let's just say you're a one-loss team, all right, and you're sitting out there at 11-1, you're going to be in the mix. I mean, you're going to be in the mix potentially at 10-2, depending on what happens everywhere else. But if you're 11-1 and you have a loss in week 3, and I've said this to you guys, I say it to everybody, just refer to the 2014 season with Ohio State. That's all you got to do. And that Virginia Tech team ended up being very, very average, and Ohio State ended up winning the national championship on their 3rd quarterback. So let's see how the chips fall.
But as Goose says, Notre Dame's schedule is weak as hell. Notre Dame still has a chance, but without a conference, they're hurt by being not in a conference. John says Notre Dame has played a candy-ass schedule for years. When I was a kid,
That's not true.
Yeah, when I was a kid, it used to be better, yeah. Tyler, Notre Dame has to lose 2 more games to be eliminated because they are a big part of this playoff. Gary, I think Clemson is still a playoff team. They do control their own destiny, and they are a pretty good football team. Speaking of pretty good, dang it, if you're an Alabama fan, you don't like to hear what I'm about to say, but my goodness, Tennessee looks good. They're on the come-up, and it's not just Nico Iamaleava, close. It's not just Nico. Their dang defense just took it to NC State on Saturday, man.
Iamaleava.
Okay.
It's the new Uiagalelei. We'll all get there.
Yeah, I don't know if I'll get there. I got Uiagalelei pretty quick.
Listen, having seen that NC State team, the thing that gets glossed over about Tennessee, it's not the wide receivers. It's not Nico. They ran for 249 yards. Everybody thinks they're this high-flying circus act in the passing game, and they can be more than capable of it. But when you line up and you play Tennessee, you better stop the run. And the problem, what they do to you is they formationally thin you out so wide horizontally that they force people to leave the box. And that's how they get you. They get a numbers advantage, and they want to run. And then what happens is you start bringing guys back into the box, and now all of the play action stuff and the ball is going over the top. I mean, their skill is really good. Dylan Sampson at the running back spot's really good. Nico's so much more accurate and I think so much more natural of a passer than Joe Milton ever was or ever will be. So that enhances the passing game. Defensively, they just hang in there, right? They just make plays. But what surprised me, not that I thought NC State would win the game. What surprised me is NC State is really experienced. I mean, they are old, redshirt juniors, redshirt seniors, graduate players. They got a receiver in Casey Concepcion that could play with anybody in the country. They've got 2 potential first-rounders at corner, a 3-time conference player of the year at quarterback in Grayson McCall. And we're talking about, if you're concerned as an Alabama fan, are you concerned as an Auburn fan? Well, if you're an NC State fan right now, you're really concerned.
Yeah.
You are really concerned to have that experience of a football team and to really play like that 2 weeks in a row.
Hot Tua on the chat room. Tennessee has a similar offense to USF, but with a way better quarterback and players all over the field. I'm afraid they're going to kill us after that performance on Saturday. He's a Bama fan there. There is some concern, if you go back and watch the USF game, that, yes, the quarterback had success running, and because of that, when he had a chance to throw, there were open receivers, and he just didn't have the skill set to get it to him. There is concern for Bama fans that the defense left some open receivers that other people will be able to find.
Potentially, but I'll add this component to that. The other people won't have Alabama's front people. And that is a big component to this is, and listen, I remember, I think week 0 in Ireland, I remember Nick Saban on the game day set, and they were happened to be talking about Ole Miss. And he said, Ole Miss has all the skill and the quarterback play you want, but the reason they couldn't beat us or Georgia is because they didn't have the front people. And he could not be more correct. It is the universal common denominator. And so I think that's where, as the secondary for Alabama grows and gets older and more experienced, they have the value and the privilege of having that group up front that can pressure the quarterback, get him off schedule, force him into errant throws.
I knew James Pierce, of course, before this, but I didn't know. I didn't really know much about Amari Thomas, the big nose tackle, until Saturday night, and that guy is a beast right there. And he opens it up for a guy like Pierce.
Yeah, he's a beast because he's not just an anchor that's occupying blockers.
Yeah,
he's a penetrator that's disruptive. He can do both, and that creates a lot of problems for people up front when you're not just a 2-gap guy.
Yeah, he reminds me of the 2 kids from Texas last year that went in the first round.
Oh, yeah, Devondre Sweat and Brian Young.
Yeah. Patrick says a lot of football to play before you get to that 3rd Saturday in October. And that's true, but Alabama's schedule At home, they still got to play number 1 Georgia and number 6 Missouri. And on the road, they play number 7 Tennessee, number 15 Oklahoma, and number 16 LSU. And this week you go to Wisconsin. Whatever you think of Wisconsin, it's going to be a better football team than they played in the opener against Western Kentucky. We'll see if it ends up being a better team than USF. But this road trip to Wisconsin to Camp Randall, I know you've been there before. What's Alabama in for this version of Wisconsin in that atmosphere at 11 a.m.?
A very bouncy stadium with fans that don't sit down. And it is a really cool environment. If you've never been to Madison, put it on your bucket list. Just don't do it in November and December. This is the month you want to be playing there. I would go so far as to say I bet you South Florida has better overall team speed than Wisconsin does. And that will benefit. I think that will benefit Alabama. I mean, I'm looking at Alabama and their wide receiving core and their skill offensively with a dynamic running quarterback. I don't know if Wisconsin athletically matches up very well.
Yeah,
I just don't.
That's what our guys in the chat room are saying. They're saying USF will have better athletes than Wisconsin when you get there. And I'm just afraid that's an old stereotype, but you may be right. I agree.
Well, here's the difference. I don't think it's an old stereotype, but when we compare Group of 5 and Power 5, right? There are a lot of Group of 5 teams that could take the field right now with many Power 5 level teams that are bowl caliber teams and have equal, if not better, skilled players across the board. That is something you could see each and every week in college football. The problem is the drop off in competitive depth, not depth, competitive depth. Those are two different things. Depth is having bodies. Competitive depth is having number 2 come into the game and not have a drop off from number 1. To have number 3 come into the game, not have a drop off from number 2. And that's the difference between Group of 5 programs and Power 5 programs. So Wisconsin would have probably a bit of an advantage in the trenches in terms of size, strength, competitive depth. But from a skill perspective, I think what Alabama saw from South Florida will be as good, if not better, than what they would see from Wisconsin.
Yeah, I've told you earlier about our friends at guttercapbirmingham.com, and our friends at MyBookie, who always bring you all of our football coverage throughout the year. MyBookie.ag, where I was a big winner on Texas this weekend. MyBookie.ag, promo code next round. Put those together. You get a deposit bonus there when you go there. I want to tell you about Roback, Roback.com. I got a Roback shirt on underneath here, but it is horizontally striped, so it dances on the television. So as you can see here, it dances on the TV.
Does it make you look wider?
It does make me look wider, but it also starts moving on the screen, so I had to throw the hoodie on today. But I do have Roback gear on because they're great folks. Roback.com. Use the promo code TNR20. You get 20% off your first purchase there. TNR20, 20% off. We've talked about Bama. We've talked about Auburn. We've talked about Texas. We talked about Tennessee on the rise. Klubnik being good. Now let's talk about, I haven't seen the ratings, but it wouldn't surprise me if it was the most watched game this weekend because everybody tunes in to see Coach Prime lose, and they did that. Matt Rule, and I think it was on NBC. Matt Rule dominated Colorado. Nebraska beats Colorado 28-0, I think, at the half, and then it was a little bit more competitive in the second half. Your big takeaway from this, seeing what Matt Rule is doing with Nebraska, now having them nationally ranked?
Well, in honor of our first show last year, where you guys got me in all kinds of trouble, I will say this, and I said it this off season. Don't confuse movement with progress. Just because you've decided to flip the roster again and ship guys out and bring guys in, the reality of the situation is this. If you take number 12 and number 2 off of that football team, they are a 1-11 football team. Maybe at best. That's the reality. You can sit there and fight it and debate it and talk all you want. Don't pay attention to 2 and 12. Start watching everybody else, because that is where the crutch of the issue still remains. And the reality is, I think they know it, and everybody they're playing knows it, and the schedule this year is far more difficult than it was in the Pac-12. And the Big 12 did them no favors, Jim.
Yeah, they did not. And I will tell you, for the first time, it looked to me like 2 and 12 agreed with you. And, you saw Travis, getting into it with Coach on the sideline a little bit. And Shador. Yeah, Shador afterwards in postgame was like, when people started – there was a lot of back and forth. And Shador in the postgame was like, you're asking me about this game and about what is Raiola? Are they able to run the ball? What does he have around him? He started asking those type of questions. Yeah, I mean, so 2 and 12, they started realizing too that, hey, we're a 2-man show and this is getting old a little bit.
It's getting old, and the problem is when you start making public comments like that, start throwing people under the bus. How do you think that offensive line wants to play for him now? Right? And if there's this sense that the entire program is about 3 people, 4 if you include the head coach, that sooner or later that's going to fracture, right? And so now when you need the locker room the most, when you need leadership the most, and your leadership hopefully is going to come from your best players. But if the best players alienate themselves and there's a separation there, how are you supposed to recover and move on and perform to the highest standard that you are capable of? And listen, you think Colorado State hasn't had this one notched on the wall for a year? I mean, that was a game they probably should have won last year in Boulder. Now, I don't know how they'll fare this week in Fort Collins, but you get past this Colorado State game and you start looking at the schedule, it's going to get everybody's going to pay close attention to it. But again, as a football fan, if you're a fan, if you love Deion Sanders, you love Shador, you love Travis Hunter, that's fine. But if you're wondering why Colorado's not successful, remove those guys and now start looking at the rest of the 2D.
Pritch Law, back to the Alabama offensive line issue. If that version of Alabama's offensive line shows up even for half a quarter against Georgia, the Dogs will destroy them. That's coming up in week 5. He says Wisconsin doesn't look scary, but if Alabama's offense plays like it did for 3.5 quarters Saturday, we'll lose that game for sure. NH3-425 USF will be the possible group of 5 playoff team. They're that good there. Bama's got to improve on the O-line is a big talking point over there in our mybookie.ag chat room. Same thing about Auburn and Peyton Thorne. Some Auburn fans wanting a change there, and some of them are starting to worry a little bit about Hugh Freeze there. Last year when Nick Saban started hearing, everyone's wondering about, what about the backups? What about the backups? What did he do? He threw out the backups at USF and said, okay, here they are. This is why we're going with Jalen Milroe. Is there a chance? Is there a chance against New Mexico this week that Hugh Freeze just goes, well, here they are. This is why we're going with Peyton Thorne. Is he going to throw somebody out there to the Lions?
Wouldn't surprise me one bit. And just, first of all, something has to happen. And you don't want to just abandon a guy. But as I mentioned in our first segment, Jim, there comes a point where the sample size is large enough that this is what you are going to get. This is what he is. Can you manage that? And is it good enough to win with? So far, the answer is no. But is the other option that is on the table convincingly better? Because if it was, Peyton Thorne wouldn't be the starter to begin the season. I mean, that's the reality of the situation.
Okay, coming up, we got about 6 minutes left in the show, 6:30. So we'll get fast-paced. Remember, the Middle Eight coming up at the top of the hour. Episode 2 of their long journey as a show. Brandon Marcello and Ryan Brown, the Middle Eight coming up. Marcello jumped in on the chat last night on Dunaway After Dark. If you want to see more on Alabama and Auburn with Chris Stewart and Kyle Rush of thebarnauburn.com and Chris Stewart, the voice of the Tide, when you're done watching all of our stuff today, you can go back and catch that with an encore performance of Dunaway After Dark right here on this same platform.
Hey, Jim.
Yes.
Why'd you name it the Middle Eight? I'm curious if you took the football.
That is exactly it. Ryan Brown and Marcella came up Middle Eight with the football, since they're in between our show, which is the post, and then the next round, which is the other post. They were the middle show, and they came up with a great name. Final 4 minutes of the first half, first 4 minutes, the Middle Eight.
That's it. It's so funny you say that, because Sean Clark, the head coach at App State, they pride themselves on the Middle Eight. That's all he talks about all the time. So well done by you guys.
Middle
and by
Eight.
the way, who said Ryan could infiltrate our show today?
You see, Ryan? Oh yeah,
Oh, I can see Ryan.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
He's preparing, man. This is show prep. He's over there getting ready.
We need to pixelate him.
Yeah, he does. He doesn't. he doesn't show up on for our viewers. You're only seeing him on the. We just did. We got a side punch there, so we got Brownie jumping in. Brownie, you want to jump in like they do on local news? What's coming up? What's coming up in the news at 10?
Well, Jim, when you and Tom are finished here, we're going to break down all the games of the middle eight. I like that Luginbill football guy immediately knew what middle eight meant. Football guy.
He did. He knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. They're coming up at the top of the hour. The beautiful, perfect hair that I admire, Brandon Marcello, will join Brian Brown. Is it possible to be the greatest coach in your school's history and then be on the hot seat? I'm asking for Mark Stoops' friends.
Oh, my goodness. Yeah, listen, it's fair now because, the quarterback play, there has been a bit of a drop-off. I mean, you could make the argument that regardless of Will Levis and his physical attributes, he was often injured and often very erratic, right? So it's funny, too, because do you guys remember a few years back, it might have been the greatest coaching job on offense in college football that year with Eddie Gran was the offensive coordinator of Kentucky for Mark Stoops.
Yep. And
they lost their two quarterbacks, and they literally took their best offensive player and ran a wildcat offense the entire year and got to a bowl game.
Yep.
Like it was unbelievable. So listen, he is the greatest coach in program history. Deserves all the credit in the world. But right now they're not performing to his standard and to the standard that they built for themselves. And with that is going to come scrutiny and some heat.
Yeah, and I will tell you that at least they get a break in the schedule. All they get is number 1 Georgia coming to Kroger Field, Commonwealth Stadium. That South Carolina team I didn't think was any good, and they're now sitting 2-0, and they get the host game day this week, which is very interesting with LSU coming to town for that game coming up this weekend. Arkansas, dude, they played so well in the first half against Oklahoma State and still fought through every mistake and got it to overtime. I thought they were going to pull a big upset. Bobby Petrino has changed that offense so quickly, and Taylor Green looked good there for a while.
I think Taylor Green is a problem. I mean, he's only going to get better. I'm seeing a lot of the same offensive traits and tendencies that Bobby had at Louisville with Lamar Jackson. Not saying he's Lamar Jackson, but the athletic component that he brings to their offense changes them because he can keep plays alive. But maybe the other side of this token is Arkansas beat Oklahoma State up front. Oklahoma State couldn't run the football with arguably the best, if not one of the best running backs in college football. You're on the road. Win or lose, and of course there are no moral victories, but from the team we saw take the field last year for 12 weeks at Arkansas and the team we saw on Saturday, that is a vastly improved football team.
Yeah, and for you Auburn fans, that was one that we were counting as a W in this opening 5-game homestand, and they come in a couple of weeks down to Jordan-Hare Stadium. After New Mexico, you got Arkansas and Oklahoma, and we were thinking Auburn 5-0, and now 1-1, and Arkansas looks better, and Oklahoma looks better. That schedule got a lot tougher for Auburn there. Over in the chat room, Tough as Nails said Scott Frost in Nebraska got the boot. He was one of the better players. He was never one of the better coaches. Mark Stoops is arguably the best coach in Kentucky history and is growing to get on the hot seat a little bit as we roll around up there in Kentucky with Georgia coming to town. Oregon, people are asking about Oregon. Something seems to be missing with the Ducks right now. Final minute of the show. Give me a 30-second answer.
They've been pushed around up front on both sides of the ball for 2 weeks. I think that's the thing that everybody's scratching their head going, what are we seeing here, right?
Yep.
And that's a team, like I mentioned with NC State, that is old, experienced, talented. Obviously, they're a much better team than NC State, but they're making similarities in terms of how they've taken the field and performed comparative to what their ability level is. And that's been disappointing if you're an Oregon fan. Because it's only going to get more difficult with the trench play in the Big Ten.
That is Monday Morning Live, video and audio platforms. You can go back and watch it if you missed any of it at your convenience tonight. Luke's, thank you. Safe travels on the way to Maryland, Virginia, 7 o'clock ACC Network this week. Ryan Brown and Brandon Marcello are up next with the Middle Eight. I'll see you at 9 with the next round.